We've got 7 different stories from 7 different media outlets, you guys. It is time for another premiere video of Regan's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here, where we do here on this premiere video called Regan's Newsround, where I cover 7 different stories from 7 different media outlets. The date and time and recording of this is the 25th of October 2024 at 10:58 a.m. And just before I start, I want to give you guys the quote, the daily quote of the day. This is something I've been doing across live streams, but obviously I'm not. But I wanted to give you the one for Saturday when this is dropping. And this one today is, this quote is, "We're all so busy chasing the extraordinary that we forget to stop and be grateful for the ordinary." Choose what you make the will of that quote, you guys. But if you want to see them on a regular basis, do check out on my other social medias. I post them pretty much across all my social medias, from Discord to Facebook, TikTok, whatnot. Not TikTok, but Instagram, Twitter, and whatnot. Anyways, let's get started, guys. So the first one we've got for you today is from The Guardian. Yvette Cooper reinstates the Home Office unit for post-Windrush culture change. The Home Secretary also pledges to appoint a commissioner to advocate for those affected by the scandal. This is long. This needs to be resolved. Why are we still having this issue? Why has this not been dealt with? Now, was Labour doing enough when they were last in power? I think an honest answer is no. And did the Conservatives do anything about this? No, clearly they did not. Otherwise, we would not be still talking about this. I welcome this decision by the government. I welcome this decision by the Home Secretary to appoint a commissioner to advocate those affected by the scandal and to kind of try to get to the bottom of this and get this done. And those affected by what happened by Windrush obviously still scars those people today. Many of them have still not got compensation or any kind of reprimands whatsoever for what happened to them, and this is still ongoing. It is still frustrating. It is incredibly disheartening for those that still, after all this time, that they're still not getting anything in return for what happened. So let's read more into it, guys. So, a scrapped Home Office team responsible for reforming the department in the wake of the Windrush scandal has been reinstated by the Home Secretary. Yvette Cooper admit a fundamental reset of the government's response to the issue. Yeah, so basically it was gotten rid of, basically. The post-Windrush transformation unit was set up after the 2018 scandal to help introduce cultural change within the Home Office to ensure similar disasters could not occur. And it was quietly disbanded by the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman in 2023. Oh, I wonder why she did that. Staff were said to at times to have felt frustrated that the unit had been closed before the promised reforms were delivered. Cooper made a manifesto commitment to reopening the team, and seven people have been hired to work within the relaunched unit, or ensuring the department maintains humanity within its decision-making process. Officials said that the new staff felt passionate about improving the department's response to the scandal. The government will also be appointing a Windrush commissioner to act as an independent advocate for all those affected by the scandal, which saw thousands of long-term residents, most of whom were born in the Commonwealth cultures and travelled to Britain in the 1950s and 60s. Wrongly classified by the Home Office as illegal immigrants, many people lost jobs, homes and pensions as a result, and some were wrongly detained and deported. The Windrush Commissioner will also be responsible for driving improvements in the compensation scheme, which has been repeatedly criticised for slow decisions and slow payouts. New grant funding of the $1.5 million will be made available to pay for support for people applying for compensation. For many, filing a claim is intimidating and requires them to revisit past traumas. By sharing their experiences with impartial community members, we want to make this process as supportive as possible, Cooper says. The Home Office has previously committed to creating a Migrants Commissioner with a post with a wider remit, responsible for speaking up for the migrants more generally and scrutinising the whole immigration system. It is not clear from officials whether this position would be subsumed by the narrower responsible for the Windrush Commissioner role. In a written statement, Cooper said that the reopening unit would report to the Home Office Ethnics Advisor and would be dedicated to driving forward the action needed to ensure that what happened to the Windrush generation can never happen again or any part of our society. She said the Windrush scandal caused terrible pain and heartache for many families in the Windrush generation and in the wider Commonwealth community. It is rightly recognised as a period of national shame. The hurt and anguish felt by so many have been compounded further by those who haven't received the compensation and justice they are owed. Committing to the change in the government approach, Cooper said the department would be working more closely with victims and communities to ensure a scandal of this kind can never happen again, and dignity can be restored to those tragically affected. Julia Griffin, 63, who travelled to Britain from Barbados at the age of 9, and who was told she was an illegal immigrant in 2015 and prevented from working, said she hoped the announcements would lead to an accelerated justice. A lot of people affected by this have developed illnesses from the stress. This is something that stays with you for the rest of your life. The last government added salt to the wound by not delivering on promises. We need to stop talking and get things moving, she said. Yeah, as Keir Starmer said on his first speech as Prime Minister, action, not words. And these are good steps in the right direction, but obviously we need to see this change over time, and I generally do hope we do see that change over time for them. It is going to be I hate to say it's going to be a long process, because that's the problem with so many things. Like, things take time it takes time to undo all this crap and nonsense that the Conservatives have done. And what a surprise that Suella Braverman was the one that broke up the Home Office team responsible for this as well. It shows how little to no care that she has about other people. Really, really does. But I do hope that the current Home Secretary and the department, with this re-establishing the team on this, do get this get this done and ensure that this does not happen again in the future. The next one we've got for you guys is from Sky News. So Labour are under pressure to fix local services in budgets as councils insist there is no more fat to cut. So a number of local authorities said they are at breaking point. 1 in 4 in England say they are likely to have applied emergency government bailouts. So I've talked about this before, about how councils are on the brink. They are struggling with financially. The Conservatives left them in this mess. Yes, some councils have put themselves in these situations, but let's be very, very clear about this. The councils have had their budgets cut to the bone by the Conservatives and their austerity, and it was compounded when we left the European Union as well, because they lost a lot of funding that they used to have from the European Union, all these councils, and they never got that some of that money recouped back from the UK government, or even any of it at all. So some of them have really lost out, and there's just been a lot of stagnation when it comes to projects. Some projects in the UK, in particular England, have had to stop because the councils in those areas just didn't have the fundings for them anymore, which is a terrible, terrible shame. And if we want to grow the economy, we've got to be able to fund our services properly. And Labour will have to put, they have to put taxpayers' money in back into public services, and especially in councils. They need to do this. This is absolutely vital. Local services need to be back on their feet. It's not about start fixing from the top. It's about fixing from the bottom. And if we can start in this, if they have something here for the budget that involves supporting the councils and not just rhetoric talk, not just setting up a task commission, but actually setting aside money that can actually help them on their feet, then this will be a good step in the right direction. So Folkestone has been drawing in crowds in recent years, with regeneration and private developments transforming part of this port town of the Kent coast. But many residents will tell you that the fabric of this community is being torn apart. Local services are deteriorating and have been for some time. Leisure centres have shut down, and Kent's County Council recently closed more than of its 50 youth clubs. The local library has been closed for 2 years because it has fallen into disrepair, and the local council said it cannot afford to repair it. Instead, a makeshift library has been set up across the road in what was once a youth centre. This is not a unique story. Across the country, local authorities have seen their budgets slashed over the past decade. And since 2010, central government has cut its grants, forcing local councils to raise more council tax, and that hasn't been enough to make up the shortfall. Their total spending power plummeted by 26% over the past decade. And at the same time, demand for core services, mainly adult social care, has soared, meaning councils are trying to deliver more for less. Unsurprisingly, non-critical services have been the first to go. Residents of Folkestone say they have had enough and expect the new Labour government to make good on its promise to fix their local services. Matthew Jones, a local campaigner, said, "Libraries are not just a place where you borrow books, it's the centre of a community, where people come who are not only unemployed but students too, a place where they can actually find somewhere warm and safe to study with people around them who can help them." Kent County Council had to make £90 million of savings last year and is now looking to make another £85 million. Along with closing down services, the council is selling its headquarters and listed building as it has called home for more than 100 years because it can no longer afford to maintain it. Peter Oakford, the council's deputy leader, said there was more fat to cut. "We feel for the residents because of the position that we are in, and we are asking for people to pay more for less service. Until the government fully funds social services so the council can fund other areas of non-discretionary business that we support residents with, then we're going to be in the same position." Local authorities, along with other unprotected budgets such as courts and prisons, have borne the brunt of cuts since 2010, as central government sought to prioritise funding for the NHS and schools. The problems have reached breaking point at a number of local authorities, as 1 in 4 councils in England say they are likely to have to apply for emergency budget government bailout agreements to stave off bankruptcy in the next 2 financial years, according to a new survey by the Local Government Association. This is local authority spending. Yeah, and you can see there since 2010 it's just dropped off a cliff. And in the last couple of years it has increased a little bit, but yeah, they cut it right to the bone. It's absolutely disgusting. That source is from IOG there. A separate report by the union Unison found that local authorities are grappling with a £4.3 billion black hole in the budgets next year, which will rise to £8.5 billion the following year. And the Chancellor is under pressure to find extra money for local councils in her budget next week, but she is grappling with spending demands across the public sector. Rachel Reeves maintains that this type of day-to-day spending can only be covered through taxation, but the government has promised not to raise income tax, national insurance or VAT. This means the Chancellor has a difficult balance to strike. And she cannot ignore this crisis. She cannot ignore this crisis. People will be up in arms if something is not done. I'd like to think they would be up in arms about it. At least I'd like to think so. Whether they will is another. Whether he'll be up on ups is another matter. But I'm sure that she knows, and I'm sure that there will be Labour MPs, without a shadow of a doubt, pressuring the Chancellor within that government to give something to the councils, to give some kind of moral support. Don't just, like I said at the start of this story, don't just set up a commission, don't just set up review, don't just set up action plans. Like, literally put money aside for these councils. Give them something. Give them a boost. Give them something that will get them on their feet. And I think if you do that, it'll be a step in the right direction. I generally believe it can be done. There is money there within there is taxpayer money there. And if you got to tax other things to do so, do it, because we need these services running properly. For a whole wide range of reasons. For local economies, not just obviously the economy, the main UK economy, but local economies, local businesses, people being able to get to A to B. There's all, it's the community aspect. Let's bring that back. Let's not lose. We've lost so much already over the last 14 years. Let's try and restore the feeling that we've lost under this from what the Conservatives done to us. The next story I've got for you guys is from the BBC. A bit of trying to push for some defections here from Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has called on Tory councillors to join Reform UK. She's called on Conservative county councillors to defect to his Reform UK party. Now, apparently some of the councillors that he's targeting are those that are likely to leave. They're under the greatest threat from the next local elections. And Nigel Farage is kind of trying to spook them into basically joining with Reform, because Reform are seen as a bit of a safe bet, especially for those on the right. They consider a safe pair of hands, and Nigel Farage obviously wants to try and get more get some hands on more councils. That's one thing they are definitely lacking in comparison to the other parties, especially the Greens. The Greens have over 80 council seats, and I think the Reformer have less than 10. Despite the fact they have 5 MPs, they have less than 10 council seats, I believe. Maybe they have a bit more than 10, but they don't have that many councillors, to be fair. That's because they don't have a proper system, whereas the Green Party have 80 plus. 80 plus. The Lib Dems have more than 100, and obviously Conservatives, Labour and SNP, they all have plenty in their parts. Even Plaid Cymru, obviously, in Wales. That's something that they don't really have properly set up in their system. But rather than obviously try and fight for some of these councils to take them off the Conservatives, Nigel was just trying to tell them, yeah, you should just come and join us instead. Why are you with them anymore? So in a letter obtained by the BBC, the party leader, Nigel Farage, has warned Tory councillors that Reform's ground campaign capabilities will be formidable by May's local elections. Speaking on X, Farage is also the MP for Clacton in Essex, as said he was writing to 1,352 Conservative county councillors, as another huge number for them generally agree with us and what we stand for. A Conservative Party spokesperson said, Reform has delivered a Labour government. A vote for Reform this coming May is a vote for a Labour council. In the letter sent to Essex Conservative Council councillors, Farage said, our door is open and you should consider standing for Reform UK. Farage told them, since the general election we've been assembling a National Assembly election a winning machine, a historic speech with hundreds of branches already established and over 90,000 active members ready to campaign. He has given Conservative councillors until November the 6th to join and warns there will be a Reform candidate standing against them. For somebody has been selected, we will not stand them down, he wrote. Farage said there were other councillors in talks with us after 2 Southend councillors defected from the Conservatives in September. Conservative Kevin Bentley, leader of Essex County Council, said Farage's letter does smack of desperation. He says some members have a message from Reform and dismiss it. Have had a message from them and dismissed it. A former Conservative councillor who was briefly a general election candidate has joined Reform UK. Jamie McVullar, who represents Ongar on Essex County Council, announced on X that he had joined Farage's party. The Conservatives said McVullar was expelled from the party on October the 9th following a disciplinary hearing. Oh, okay. So it wasn't just a straight defection. It was like, oh, you've been told off. Oh, I'm quitting. I'm switching to Reform instead. McVullar said he had already quit and that he had joined Reform UK as it puts people and country first. Okay, sure it does. He accuses the Conservative Party of being too weak to deal with its handful of toxic individuals as they try to punish my ambitions and visions. He said, Reform has won the trust of the next generation and we are the future. We want our country back on track, rescuing it from unpatriotic minorities and putting the patriotic majority back in the driver's seat. But you're not the majority. You're not the majority because that's not what the majority voted for. You have your voters, there's no question. Nobody's denying you didn't have your voters, but you're not the majority. McVullar was selected to stand for the Conservatives in Hemel Hempstead in the general election, but hours before the deadline for nominations to be submitted, he was dropped and suspended by the party pending an investigation. The Conservative spokesperson said Mr. McVullar was suspended by the party and removed from the candidates list in June. After a disciplinary hearing, he was expelled from the Conservative Party on the 9th of October. McVullar said he will continue to serve my residents as a Reform UK councillor on both Essex County Council and Ipplin Forest District Council. Elections for Essex County Council are due to be held in May 2025. Earlier this year, he posted on X, for every person that joins Reform UK, they become another campaigner for a Labour government, which would achieve the polar opposite of what they want to see changed. A spokesperson for Reform UK says, we believe James McVullar has been a victim of vicious Tory infighting. We look forward to announcing many more councillors joining us in Essex from the Tory sinking ship. The Conservatives, without I wouldn't call them a sinking ship right now, because since after the election there have been some council seats. There have been some very small local local council elections here and there, bits here and there, and the Conservatives have won quite a few. They've taken a few back from Labour. So some people, unfortunately, are a bit stupid and think that the voting Conservative is actually beneficial for the country, even though they've been in blatant denial of the last 14 years. But Reform has no intention of disappearing or going anywhere. It was really much a case of I remember looking at this election, the run up to this election, and it was really much a case, and I remember saying, like, if they don't do well, they're going to disappear. And not only did they do well, they got 5 MPs and they got a huge chunk of the population on board. And this is not something people can take away lightly. Lib Dems and the Greens, Liberal Democrats who have been around for a long time, even though they have a lot of MPs, they still didn't get as many votes as Reform. They didn't. That's the reality. And they should be generally concerned about that. The Greens are also on the rise too, from the left perspective, if you want to call it that as well. But Farage is obviously putting it to them. Like, it's up to these councillors whether they want to make that decision or not. I think a part of them don't need to. I think a lot of it is a bit of rhetoric talk, because it's about what action they do on the ground as well. And there's been a lot of criticism about Nigel Farage and what he's been doing in Clacton, because he hasn't actually had. He's claiming to have had many. What's the word? Chats with constituents about their issues and whatnot. But apparently they've all been from Zoom, even though there's no information that verifies that, apparently. So make what you will of that, guys. Right, so the next one I've got for you guys, for those who like football. I'm not a personal fan of football, but I know it's one of the most important sports in the UK, in particular in England. But I do think it's... but this one, obviously, I think it's important. So football clubs will be forced to consult fans on ticket prices and stadium moves. So if a club fails to meet the conditions laid down by a new regulator, they will potentially be at risk of losing their license to operate. Now, this bit here, I'm not buying for 1 second. If they are a big club, the chances of this happening is very, very slim. Now, if they are a low-level club and their ticket prices are reasonable, then they don't need to worry about anything too much on this. But for me, it's about the high enders, the bigger clubs, the Premier League clubs, the big boys. You know, I'm looking at Arsenal in particular, because they have some of the most expensive football tickets on the planet, which is absolutely diabolical. They are the ones that those Premier League clubs, the top ones. You know who they are. They're the ones who literally rip the absolute life savings out of your pocket to attend their games. And it's insane. It's absolutely insane for that. And I just, sometimes a part of me just, it does frustrate me sometimes when they say they're going to do stuff and whether it falls through. The thing is that I don't think that, in all seriousness, that the government are serious enough about tackling the issue with the Premier League and the out-of-control power that the Premier League has, because these clubs have far too much power, far too much influence, because they bring so much money to the UK economy that you don't really want to do anything to upset them. And that's the thing. And I just think this is to make it... I do think this will not be as strong as they claim it to be. I just think sometimes it's just there to make it look like that we're dealing with these problems. But part of me is not really buying into it, if I'm honest, guys. So football fans will get better protection from football ticket price rises and stadium moves under Labour's plans to toughen up the game's new proposed regulator. Clubs will now have to undertake effective engagement with supporters on ticket price increases or planned stadium moves, with the condition forming part of a new licence for teams that operate that will be overseen by the watchdog. Now, absolutely, especially stadium moving like that, you must have consultation with this fans. Like, I remember what happened with Wimbledon Football Club, and the owner taking that club away all the way up to Milton Keynes. I thought it was the most diabolical, disgusting thing. That one of the most disgusting things that happened. I mean, obviously, there's been a lot of football owners throughout the history, but I remember looking back on that history, and that was one of the most shameful things that ever happened to football. That their fans had their club literally taken away from them. And rather than the owner actually, if he wanted a club in Milton Keynes, could have built one from scratch, but no, he took someone else's football club away. I thought that was one of the most shameful things. But I'm sure there's plenty of other stories for football fans will point out. So Keir Starmer has also bowed to pressure from UEFA to remove a requirement for the new regulator to take into account government foreign and trade policy when deciding whether to approve takeovers. UEFA and FIFA had a lot of issues around this regulator. They had some serious concerns about it. Europe's governing body had threatened to ban England from the Euros 2028. It is co-hosting the controversial clause, and after reports of extended offers of Boris Johnson's government, including discussions with MI6 to get highly controversial Saudi-backed takeover of Newcastle over the line in 2021. Yeah, I don't like that still. I didn't like that. UEFA argued that keeping the requirement would represent unacceptable political interference in how the game is run, putting clubs in hook to changing government foreign policy. Elsewhere, in changes to the regulator, there will also be a boost for fan representation at clubs and greater oversight of controversial parachute payments for relegated teams, which some argue disjoint the lower leagues and incentivize other clubs to take financial risks. Yeah, more needs to be done to stop these financial risks. More needs to be done to stop clubs taking massive financial risks to push themselves to the Premier League, and then when they don't do it and they fail in the Championship, they end up with this massive debt. And they're not just obviously there, but other clubs in other league tables do the same too. The Culture Secretary Lisa Andy said the changes to the law will set up a new football regulator, were designed to tackle mismanagement and reckless spending while putting fans back at the heart of the game and taking on rogue owners. So under the football governance bill introduced by Labour, the watchdog will now explicitly require clubs to provide effective engagement with their supporters on changes to ticket prices and any proposals to relocate their home ground. The watchdog will now have the power to compel clubs to select the fan representatives clubs must engage with by holding elections rather than clubs making a unilateral decision to ensure the process is not an effective whitewash. If they fail to meet the conditions laid down by the regulator, including non-consultation of fans, they will potentially be at risk of losing their license to operate, shutting them out of the professional leagues altogether. They will not do this. I'm not buying this for 1 second that they will shut them down. Some of these clubs are too big, for them to close down. I consider this an empty threat. Clubs will be required to publish what action they are taking on equality, diversity and inclusion as part of the new governance code introduced by the watchdog. Other key changes will see the regulator given the power to include parachute payments in their assessment of finances across the game in a bid to provide stability for the football pyramid. Parachute payments are currently awarded to teams dropping down from the Premier League to help them adjust their finances, but critics argue it gives them an unfair advantage in the Championship over clubs without the payments. The bill, originally proposed under the Conservatives following Dame Tracy Crouch, a fan-led review of football, will be laid in Parliament on Thursday. Mr. Nancy said, English football is one of our great exports and a source of national pride, which this government wants to see thrive for generations to come. But for too long, financial instability meant loyal fans and whole communities have risked losing their cherished clubs as a result of mismanagement and reckless spending. This bill seeks to properly readdress the balance, putting fans back at the heart of the game, taking on rogue owners and crucially helping put clubs up and down the country on a sound financial footing. I mean, it sounds good on paper, and I'm somebody obviously who doesn't follow football anymore. I've stopped watching football altogether, if I'm honest, guys. Every now and then I might look at some of the tables, but that's about it. But for me, for a long period in the game, it's always been about the money and not enough about the fans. And fans dedicate their entire life savings, their time, traveling with their clubs, around the world to support them. They literally give fans give a lot to their clubs. And for me, some of these big clubs do not give enough back to fans. And in terms of value for money, I do think it's quite scandalous sometimes, the ticket prices that people pay for. I really, really do. I think there needs to be more done about it to address it. But do I think this is going to make a massive difference? I do think some guards may compelled to do some of it, but do I see any kind of expulsions or whatnot? I think they're empty threats, if I'm honest. I think they're empty threats. You know, I don't see Labour doing that, if I'm honest. But maybe some people will see differently. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. So guys, we've about half an hour into Regan's news round. I've got 3 more stories to cover here. So before we go on to the next story, guys, if you haven't already, just a reminder, please hit the like button. It'd be greatly appreciated if you're finding the content informative and interesting to yourself. If you share it across social media, across other different platforms, other people become notified of it. So it's not just obviously the YouTube algorithm that I want to boost, but obviously bringing other people from other social medias who find this kind of content informative and helpful to them. So if you can share it, it'd be greatly appreciated. And if you're somebody who's new to the channel and has been watching some of the content for a while now, and you're finding the content helpful to you or informative, beneficial to you, please consider subscribing, because it really does help. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, but it really does help support the channel. It gets me one step closer to reaching 2,000 subscribers, which is what I want to reach by the end of the year. If you're somebody that wants to go one step further and financially support me in the work that I do here, because this is my main source of income, you can financially support me by leaving a super chat here in the premiere video, or you can join the YouTube membership for just 99p. 99p may not sound like a lot, but you get a lot of benefits for it as well. Custom emojis that you can use in live streams and premiere videos. You also get access to membership community posts, and whenever you comment on any of my videos as a YouTube member, you always get a response from me. And not only that, you also get early access to content before non-members do as well. So you get all these perks just for being a 99p member. So do consider the membership, and do consider reoccurring if you can afford it. Obviously, if you can't, that's totally fine as well. If you want to financially support me in other ways, you can do so by buying me a coffee. Link for that's in the description, or you can join me on Patreon as well, and which you get there's exclusive content on that platform which you get as well, whether you're a paid or non-paid member on Patreon as well. And I also do exclusive content on Rumble as well. Both links for them and all my other social medias are in the description. There's a links tree. If you click that, it gives you access to all my social medias, including non-political stuff as well. So thank you very much for listening. Let's have a bit of fun, guys. This funny video is one that we've heard before, but I hope you guys enjoy it. It is from Broken News. Rejoice! Apparently there is no more austerity. Yay! Question mark. Oh, I pressed the wrong button.
Welcome to Broken News. The UK can breathe a sigh of relief after it was announced there would be no return to austerity. Some had expressed fears that the new Labour government was becoming almost indistinguishable from the Conservative-led government of 2010. Our reporter has more.
Yes, thank you. As you can see behind me, there are wild celebrations on the streets of Britain after the new Chancellor confirmed that austerity is a thing of the past. At the Labour Party conference here on the banks of the Mersey, Rachel Reeves said, "We must deal with a Tory legacy of failure, and that means tough decisions." Which thankfully is a far cry from George Osborne at the 2010 Tory party conference in Birmingham, when he said, "We must deal with a Labour legacy of failure, and that means tough decisions." Of course, when Mr. Osborne laid out austerity measures, he said that difficult choices were needed to fix the foundations for a more prosperous future. Rachel Reeves has taken a starkly different approach by saying that difficult choices would be needed to fix the foundations to revive our prosperous future. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has announced plans to tackle the welfare budget, insisting that people claiming long-term sickness benefits should be expected to look for work. He added that some decisions may be painful, but that rebuilding the economy must be fair. It represents a dramatic shift away from the Conservatives' announcement of 2012, when David Cameron said that people claiming long-term sickness benefits should be expected to look for work, and George Osborne added, "Yes, it's tough, but it's also fair." Of course, Labour has pointed out that they've only just come to power and are dealing with a massive black hole in public finances because of the Tories' reckless spending. Whereas in 2010, the Conservatives said they'd only just come to power and were dealing with a black hole in public finances because of Labour's reckless spending. Well, of course, today there's a great deal to be positive about. You could say that the good times are back, with many looking forward to Labour's exciting plan to cut winter fuel payments, keep a two-child benefit cap and force government departments to save over £5 billion. In a statement laying out Labour's economic plan, Keir Starmer said, "While there are big international issues to deal with, like the return of the sausages from Gaza, we must also bake changes at home, reduce the welfare stake and get people back to pork," which looks funny written down, but doesn't work as an audible pun. Back to you.
What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
So there you go, guys. You have been up to date by Broken News. Make sure you check out youtube.com/Larry and Paul. Their content there. Do check out whenever they do live tours as well. Definitely do great stuff they do. So do check them out if you haven't already. youtube.com/Larry and Paul. Right, let's carry on, you guys. Next one I've got for you guys. Well, this kind of statement is kind of like, so if Russia does invade us, we're buggered, I suppose. The Defence Secretary admits that Britain's armed forces can't stop an invasion. Well, here comes an invasion then. In a damning assessment, John Henley said the military could conduct operations but would be unable to deter an enemy from invading. Well, that's not good, is it? I mean, we're very fortunate that there's Europe around us. It's a shame that we're not with them, technically, in the European Union. It's a good thing we're still part of NATO. That definitely does help. And we still have a relationship with the United States. That does help. And pretty much most of our neighbours are friendly. Russia is not directly near us, but it doesn't mean to say that they still couldn't invade us if they wanted to. That's not good a sign at all. So British armed forces are so depleted that the country is not ready to fend off an invasion, Defence Secretary has warned. In the most damning assessment yet of the state of the UK's defence capabilities, John Henley said the military could conduct operations but would be unable to stop an enemy from invading. As Labour increasingly seeks to paint a desired heritage that was left by the Conservatives, Mr Henley said, the UK, in keeping with many other nations, has essentially become very skilled and ready to conduct military operations. We've not yet ready to do this to fight. Unless we are ready to fight, we are not in shape to deter. Well, something needs to be done about this to protect our island then. He told Politico Power Play podcast that the state of the armed forces when he became Defence Secretary in July was far worse and far deeper problems than we expected. We've ever heard those lines before. It's like the budget. It's like the finances. They said it was a lot worse than expected. Getting this a lot. Amid mounting frustration at the government's delay at setting a timeline for when defence spending will reach 2.5% of Britain's GDP, Mr Henley also conceded that it is taking the government a while to get going. Well, you have to put this out that the government was on holiday for a period as well. You know, there was a long out period after the general election. It had a few weeks, and then obviously there was a long break period. So it's only been the last month or two that they've been able to get things kind of going. I mean, the new year will obviously set a high bar for them. The budget, obviously, as well. There's parts of me is just like want to just kick this government and say get things done. And then there's a part of me is like trying to restrain myself, saying you've got to give them a bit of a chance as well. But it's kind of hard for me to do that, especially when with some people in my ear. So one of the Labour's government's first acts after winning the general election was to launch a root and branch assessment of the state of Britain's military capabilities. So Keir Starmer at the time said Britain's defence capabilities have been left hollowed out by 14 years of Conservative neglect, promising a roadmap to increase the UK defence spending to the target. But former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace condemned Labour's approach to the armed forces, saying, "We don't need more distractions from new reviews," he told The Independent. For our forces to be match fit and ready, we need to continue a steady and annual growth in the budget to ensure the reviews of the last few years are actually delivered. Mr. Wallace said Labour's war in Iraq and Afghanistan depletes the military and nobody can really start to fund them properly until my tenure. And he warned the new government is using its review to avoid funding and will return us to the dark old days of hollowing out that happened under both Labour and the Conservatives. After Mr. Henley's comments, the Times reported that a senior military chief inside the MOD, that's the Ministry of Defence, shared his view that if the armed forces, were forced into combat anytime soon, they could lose in a fight. And in February, on MPs on Parliament's Defence Committee warned Britain was not sufficiently prepared to fight an all. Oh my God, these adverts are so frustrating. To fight an all-out war, despite such readiness being a vital deterrent to Britain's adversaries. The military is consistently overstretched with the unrelenting pressure on personnel, exacerbating the crisis in recruitment and the retention, which is seeking more people leaving the armed forces than joining, the influential group of MPs have warned. But Tory MP James Carlton said Mr. Henley and MP should not talk down the armed forces' capabilities. Yeah. A part of me is in kind of I'm kind of in a slight agreement with James here and what he's saying, because you're admitting that your forces are weak and that you're vulnerable, and you shouldn't be giving your enemies that impression in any way, shape, or form. You can let the media say what they want on it, but you shouldn't be saying it out in the open. He told the Times that the UK has the ultimate deterrence in the Trident nuclear program and had committed nearly 20,000 personnel to a recent NATO exercise. He added, equally there are gaps to fill and replenish, not at least in terms of replacing the munitions that were rightly gifted to Ukraine, but also the impact of the labour market on the retention. We've accepted the need to increase the defence budget to 2.5% because the threat is growing and the nature of warfare is rapidly evolving. So Keir Starmer's defence review will determine the future of Labour's posture of the UK, the capabilities needed to chart a path to Britain's meeting Labour's cast iron commitment of defence spending hitting 2.5% of GDP. It will put a NATO-first policy at the heart of UK's plans that will be drawn up with inputs from allies, experts and the defence industry. And the review will respond not just to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, but also the instability in the Middle East and the rise of authoritarian countries. Labour's ranks in the Commons were swelled after their election win by a record number of ex-military personnel who had recently left the service. They include Colonel Alistair Carnes, a Royal Marine awarded the Military Cross for mission to undertake in Afghanistan, who has made Veterans Minister on his first day in Parliament. That's a very good sign, obviously, there. But for me, it's not just about the defence, the spending and cost. One of the biggest problems and the challenges, and I've spoken about this before on the channel, is about the numbers, the recruitments. It's about getting more people to sign up to the British Army, or whether it's the Navy, the Special Marines, whatever it may be. We need to incentivise more people to join the army. And while there are perks to them, I do think there needs to be more campaigning by the army, and I think there needs to be a much bigger dedicated campaign force to push more people into it. It is a challenge, I know. I don't want to force anyone into joining the army, but I do think we need to push more people, try and incentivize more people into it, especially at a young age, especially at schools and colleges. I think that's something that should be put in front of parents, should be put in front of schools and teachers, and should be something strongly encouraged as well. Even if it's just a couple of years in service at a young age, especially for those who have some struggles and whatnot, that might help them. It might help them, teach them universal discipline, and it may even encourage them to be more part of the army and whatnot. So that there are great benefits for people to join in the armed forces, and there are opportunities here. And I do think, you should try to push more of that in front of people. I understand how people feel about the army and whatnot, but I do think there's an opportunity for Labour to get more people back into it. But like I said, it's all about incentivising people to join the army. If you can offer it with perks and benefits and whatnot that you get for it, it's all the better for people who end up joining in the end, I would say. Is it perfect? No. And obviously, if there are wars, obviously, rightfully so, people have a right to be concerned about that. Absolutely. But I do think it is something that they should consider on the matter. So the next one I've got for you guys is from openDemocracy. So Waheed Alli was found to have breached rules after openDemocracy's investigation. The Labour donors failure to declare directorship at a firm based in tax haven broke the rules on financial interests. So basically, this one is confirming what openDemocracy have been saying about Lord Alli, that there's been suspicions about him, and he's been found to breach rules. So from people to basic, now, is it the biggest of deals? Is this the same? Is this the same in comparison to the Conservatives? No. Is this the same with the start of things that Boris Johnson has done? No. No, not with Boris Johnson, not with Liz Truss, with a lot of Conservatives. It's not the same. No. However, the fact that Labour are in power now, the fact that they have a donor like Ali, and the kind of money that's been poured in, especially some of the recent gifts and donations, rightfully we raise questions about it, and rightfully should be calling out on it, calling out the hypocrisy on it, especially when they are the ones been screaming about being open and transparent and whatnot. And they keep saying it's within the rules, yes, but it is still, in my opinion, conflicts of interest, and I will always call it conflict of interest as long as these are allowed to happen. So Labour peer Waheed Alli has been found to have breached Parliament's rules after openDemocracy revealed that he had failed to declare business interests. The House of Lords Standard Commissioner launched a probe into Ali's interests earlier this month after an investigation by this website showed that the Labour peer had not included a directorship at Mac BVI Limited on his register of interest. I remember a lot of there were quite a few Labour Green. I think there's one or two Green MPs that tweeted it out as well to highlight this story as well. So I remember a lot of people were pointing this out. All those who were saying that Labour are completely innocent. All peers are expected to disclose any business interests under transparency rules. openDemocracy findings were today confirmed by the Standard Commissioner, who published a report saying Ali had broken the rules. The error came to light when openDemocracy reviewed Ali's register of interest in August, and he found to have failed to mention a directorship at Mac BVI Limited, a firm based in the British Virgin Islands tax haven. The directorship, which was listed on Company House, was added to Ali's register of interest only after he was contacted by openDemocracy to ask why it was missing. He said its absence was an unintentional error and hadn't realised until you'd asked me it wasn't in my list of registered of interest. Right. You know, you really should, if you're not going to do it properly, don't do it at all. Ali had already declared a chairmanship of 450 PLC, an investment firm based offshore in Jersey, which is a parent company of Mac BVI. This role does not make the peer any money. In response to our September investigation, Ali told openDemocracy, the company has yet to make an acquisition. I don't receive a fee and have no financial interest in the company until an acquisition is made. He said the company would pay tax in the UK when they make a profit. But financial accounts said Ali holds so-called incentive shares in the firm, meaning if an acquisition is completed while he is a director, he will receive a one-off transaction fee of an amount equal to £25,000 per calendar month elapsed between the date of his appointment and the platform acquired being completed. Ali told the Standard Commissioner that he does not receive a fee from and has no financial interest in Mac BVI. He said he has notified the Register of Lords interests and that the interest was registered late in what he said was unintentional but nevertheless an oversight. On the advice of the Standard Commissioner, Ali sent a letter of apology to Isal Manington-Buller, chair of the Conduct Committee, apologising for the error. And he wrote, I will endeavour to keep the code of conduct at all times to avoid such circumstances again. Ali's donation to the Labour Party have fallen under heavy scrutiny since the election. The media entrepreneur has given more than £700,000 to Labour over the past 2 decades. This summer, it was revealed that he had paid for tens of thousands of pounds of clothing for Keir Starmer and his wife, as well as a 40th birthday party for Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner stayed in New York's flat owned by Ali last December, saying it was a personal holiday. Great work by openDemocracy calling this out. They are very. I am going to say they are quite anti-Labour. I've said that in the past about open democracy. On this story in particular, I think they've done a pretty good job in rooting out and doing their investigations on this. They're certainly not perfect open democracy without a shadow of a doubt. I want to make that very clear. But there are times where when they get a story right, they get a story really well right. And this one they had on Lord Alli, very good on Ali, very on Waheed Alli. I don't know why I'm calling him Lord Alli. Apologies, but yeah, I'm glad they found this and pointed this out, and I'm glad that they gave him of holding him to account. Like I said, yes, it doesn't compare to the Conservatives, rightly so, but they're not the ones in power right now. It's Labour, so we need to make sure that accountability is put on Labour, and that's really, really important. Even if you don't always agree, even if you think it's been harsh and whatnot, I still think it's very, very important, guys. So I've got one more story for you guys. This one is from Open Democracy. The headline is: a Labour government promises bereaved COVID families that the failure of state during the pandemic will not be repeated. So Keir Starmer's right-hand man throws his weight behind the COVID-19 bereaved family of justice and says inequality plays a major factor in the pandemic. Now, this was Cabinet Secretary of State Pat McFadden addressing COVID campaigners in Parliament last Wednesday here. And I really, really hope Labour does take everything that they can on board with regards to the inquiry from the COVID-19 and do whatever it can to help the bereaved families for justice. However, the problem is there won't be any justice because of the system that we have in place, because of what the Conservatives did and decisions that they made. In particular, its Prime Minister and Health Secretary Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock, decisions that they made led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands that did not need to happen. The decision by Matt Hancock to take people out of the hospitals into care homes to procure more beds in hospitals without having them tested resulted in the deaths of more people in social care. That was a direct consequence of it. Is he going to pay for any of that action? No, he is not. Any of the decisions made by Boris Johnson, like delaying the lockdowns, for example, which could have prevented a further loss of life, will he ever pay for those actions and those decisions in particular? No, he will not. We know he will not. This is one thing that politicians are allowed to pretty much get away with what they're doing. And it is infuriating that there's no accountability for this. But one thing I'd like to think after all this is, will we learn from this? Now, part of me does feel that Labour can learn from this, but I don't see any kind of this being learnt from the Conservatives in any way, shape or form, especially when they ripped apart the National Healthcare Service in the first place. I'd like to think that the bereaved COVID families will get some justice or some comfort come the end of this inquiry, but it will... I'm not holding my breath on it either, guys, unfortunate to say. So families who lost their loved ones to COVID were victims of failure of the state, which must not be repeated, a leading cabinet minister had told campaigners. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden MP, was addressing an event by the COVID-19 bereaved family for justice in Parliament in a symbolic moment that saw the leading grassroots group backed by the new government. McFadden, who serves as Secretary of State for the Cabinet Office which coordinates disaster planning across government, told the bereaved families that Britain went into the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 with public services already stretched to breaking point and badly exposed to even minor shocks. He said pre-existing health and social inequalities had a disproportionate impact on vulnerable groups, including ethnic minorities, people who were elderly and frail, and those with existing health conditions, he said. These are weaknesses and vulnerabilities often caused by inequality, the Cabinet Minister said, in a marked shift in tone from the previous government. McFadden, a close ally of Keir Starmer, has launched a review into national resilience of how the machinery of government prepares for disasters. That work is underway, and I think it's really important that the experience of vulnerable groups and the experience of difficult communities is built into the policy all the way through, and not just bolted at the end, he said. His appearance was viewed as an endorsement of the years of campaigning for justice, often being ignored by Conservative ministers or shut out by officials. The Cabinet Office admitted that there were failures of the state across all different parts of the UK and under different governments and administrations. Now we're in government, I think the best thing we can do to honour the memory of our loved ones, of the people in this room, is to make sure that we try and learn for the future and try to better prepare for what comes next, McFadden has said. The COVID-19 Bereaved Family for Justice event brought together bereaved families, MPs and campaigners for the launch of 22 new recommendations for changes from the organisation. To better prepare for future pandemics, calls for changes including addressing health inequalities, improving data transparency and establishing strong oversight bodies for health agencies and government departments. And the group is demanding closer collaboration between central government, devolved administrations and local authorities, something McFadden also committed to. Yeah, that should be a standard thing anyway. The UK suffered what was the second worst death toll in Western Europe during the COVID pandemic, and what Labour MP Azrael Khan says was due to public service being decimated leading up to the pandemic, as well as worsening health inequalities. Khan told attendees in Parliament's Jubilee Room, "When my mother was passing away during the pandemic, I was sitting in a hospital car park. I could not go and hold her hand. I share that pain with all families who have lost their loved ones. It's been difficult for us." The Labour MP also lost both parents-in-law during the pandemic. He pointed to a 2016 government report that warned that the UK's unpreparedness for a pandemic, but which was kept secret until 6 months into the COVID-19 crisis. "There is no doubt that we will have another pandemic. The only question is when and what actions do we need to prepare," the Manchester MP has said. Deborah Coates, the CEO of campaigning organisation Inquest, highlighted the lack of accountability when it comes to implementing recommendations from inquiries and public inquests following deaths linked to failure of the state. The group is demanding a new national oversight mechanism to collate and monitor the implementation of the recommendations from inquests to drive change and prevent future deaths. The Green MP, Carla Denya, is proposing her own backbench legislation to make this happen, though it is unlikely to secure time for debate. Yeah, I don't think she'll get it, if I'm honest. However, Keir Starmer has pledged to implement a new Hillsborough law early next year, named after the football disaster in 1989 that killed 97 people. He will create a duty on public body and officials to be truthful in their evidence to inquiries. Lawyers involved with the COVID Bereaved Family for Justice, including Hillsborough Inquest lawyer Regan to help draft the legislation. Arbison backed the inquest call for a new national oversight mechanism for acting on the findings of coroners, a proper whistleblower act to protect those reporting wrongdoing within organisations, refined and enforceable. Nolan principles on standard in public life with potential criminal sanctions on those who don't comply. The bereaved family made clear their motivations to prevent others from experiencing the same unnecessary loss of loved ones that they have faced. The COVID-19 Inquiries Module 1, released in July, backed up by many of the concerns raised by the bereaved families about pandemic planning, making clear that the government was unprepared for this crisis and the disproportionate impacts it had on vulnerable groups. Absolutely. Yeah, I back a lot of, pretty much a lot of what the bereaved family wants to do. I do hope that these things do get implemented. The group want a national oversight mechanism. I'm not sure if they'll get that. Hopefully, I do hope they get a lot of the things that they want from this, at least. But justice is something that I do not expect them to get, unfortunately, as much as I want them to, guys. I know it's tough. When I think about this, actually, I sometimes think about my granddad, who passed away during the pandemic. Now I don't know whether he was directly or indirectly affected by COVID, if I'm honest. But I remember looking back and not being able to attend his funeral, not being able to say goodbye the way I wanted to, and obviously it's not the same as what other people have gone through, but you know, it's. I try to put myself in the shoes of other people to try and understand what they go through. And it's not the same, of course not. I was very lucky to have my granddad reach the age that he did, if I'm honest. I can't complain, because some people don't have that. No, I was lucky enough to have my granddad for as long as I did in my life. But I think that the lessons, obviously, I just hope they do get learned, and I do hope that there are protections and barriers put in place to ensure that what the Conservatives did never get undone again. But there's no guarantee of that, unfortunately, you guys. So just before we wrap up Premier's video, guys, I have one final video to see ourselves out. If you have watched all the way through, I do greatly appreciate it. But I'm going to leave you guys with a funny video to see ourselves out for this Premier video. It's a bit of a funny one as well, and it's kind of needed, especially on that sour one we there. This is from Nerdine Skinner Comedy. I hope you guys enjoy this one.
Alright, it's me, Sid, and I've been released. That's right, I'm one of the released prisoners that let me out. 1,000 of us are out in the streets today. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that mental? Isn't that mental? We're just 1,000 of us roaming the streets. I mean, that's criminal, isn't it? That is criminal. But you know what? It's so nice. It's so nice to smell the nice fresh air. Well, I say fresh. It's more polluted than it ever was, to be honest. If I'm going to be, honest about it, I think it's probably better inside the prison than it is outside. But no, what a legend Keir Starmer is. I mean, what, big up Keir, mate. We're out celebrating, we're in a Rolls Royce, that's it, living it large. I've got some champagne, Keir, that's it, way. Yeah, I nicked that. Yeah, don't tell anyone. Well, it wouldn't matter anyway, would it? Nobody'd do nothing. But no, I can't speak for all 1,000 of us that have been released today or nothing. But I'm going to be good. I'm going to get out there. I'm just going to try and do what I do and not get up to too much, But at the end of the day, I've got to do what I've got to do. I only do petty crimes anyway. That's what I was in for in the first place. And the way I look at it, right, it's a win-win. Innit? Because at the end of the day, I can go out, do what I do, get up to scraps, as your father, whatever, and then maybe I'll do something a bit dodge. I'll go down the station, the pigs will question me, right? Give me a slap on the wrist, a bit like Santa, I've been bad this year, and then they'll just let me back out again, because at the end of the day, there's no room left in the prisons, is there? So, win-win. What's the worst thing I've ever done? Well, I just, like I say, petty crimes, really. I love arson. I absolutely love fire. I love fire. Oh, I want to go burn something right now. I absolutely love setting things alight. A bit like this government, really, but they just keep pouring gasoline on it, don't they? But anyway, I have to say, I so respect Keir. I do. Do you know what he's doing, actually? He's created an incentive for all of us prisoners that are coming out today. We're not allowed to really be putting it on the online or nothing, but it's called Free Gear Keir. Basically, any of the gear that he can't wear anymore because he's not allowed to, he got in trouble or something, he accepted things he shouldn't have done. Anyway, he's going to give that to us. It's like proper decent stuff, right? Yeah, and we're going to sell it and make some moolah from it. Isn't that proper nice? Yeah, it's well good. And also, apparently, they're doing some online learning courses for us to help us rehabilitate. I mean, I'm not into that, but I think that's just all right, isn't it? I suppose. Driver, can we go to NatWest? They still got all of those, they still got cash on the premises and that? No. Oh, mate. Well, I suppose that's actually good, isn't it? Because those online learning courses will come in handy. That is proper good of the government, isn't it? Just realised that. Yeah, helping us to get with the times, to commit modern crimes. That rhymes. Oh, my God. Anyway, I've got to be going. I've got better get my way learning and all that. But thanks, Keir. What a legend. Love you, mate. Way.
That's just cool. Nerdine Skinner parodying one of the prisoners obviously getting out of prison. Ollie is not happy about it. He's not happy. Who let the goddamn prisoners out? Ollie's not happy about it. Ollie, one of the gang behind me, are always watching over, even on the premiere videos, guys. So I just wanted to make you guys aware that they have been here, guys. So, guys, as we end Regan's News Round, just want final thoughts. What are you guys' thoughts on some of the stories that we covered today? Covering from Yvette Cooper reinstating the Home Office unit for post-Windrush culture. Labour's under pressure into fixing local services. Do you think they're going to do that? Nigel Farage calling on Tory councillors to rejoin Reform UK. Regulations on football clubs. What do you guys make of that? The Defence Secretary actually coming out and publicly saying that British Armed Forces can't stop an invasion. Waheed Alli obviously found to have breached rules. thanks to Open Democracy's investigation. And then finally, obviously, the Labour government promising things for the bereaved COVID family. Let me know your thoughts on all these stories and more down in the comments section below. But just before I go, if you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.